Todd Young of Indiana is a member of the Senate's Bipartisan AI Working Group and is leading efforts in Congress to understand and regulate this rapidly evolving technology. Please welcome the Senator and the Messenger's technology reporter, Ben Powers.
Well, Senator, thank you so much for joining us. And
thanks for having me.
Dive right in. So I think when it comes to AI, China's obviously top of mind for a lot of different lawmakers in terms of the global competitive landscape, how we're addressing that and thinking about this both currently and then 10 years down the line. I hear a lot less discussion around other countries, maybe not adversarial. For example, thinking about the EU, thinking about Israel, India, who are also really heavily pursuing AI. Where do you think we stand in terms of that competitive landscape as well, in addition to China?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that question, Ben, and thank you to the Messenger for holding this event. This is something I've put some thought into, as my colleagues have naturally been focusing on what we might need to do legislatively, regulatorily, with respect to research in other areas on artificial intelligence this year and in coming years. I've been in parallel trying to think about how we can coordinate our activities with partners and allies and shape the global environment somewhat. Number one is research. There are real research collaboration opportunities between the United States and other countries, particularly partners and allies. We need to ensure that Indian nationals, Israeli nationals, European nationals, and many others feel comfortable in our universities and that we're collaborating. Then at the postdoc level, to the extent we're working on breakthrough, sort of cutting edge research, those activities need to be collaborative in nature as well. Much of this research occurs through our DOE labs and at the postdoc researcher level in our universities, and we can create more of those bilateral exchanges. Outside of research, which is just an obvious area for collaboration, we need to harmonize our regulatory environment after we act domestically, and perhaps with an eye to harmonizing our regulations as we pass our own laws, so that we can marry up our individual domestic efforts and set the rules of the road, as it were, for this next generation amazing technology that's going to transform all of our lives in very fundamental ways. If we do that, if we can establish the gauges to the railroad, so to speak, then when you have autocratic countries, China comes to mind, but it's not the only one, and they want to have their national champions developing AI for sometimes malign and nefarious purposes. If they want to achieve the sort of scale that's necessary to really drive down the costs of those technologies and reinvest in the success of those models, they're going to have to be able to sell into our markets, and therefore they'll have to design their technologies consistent with our rules of the road. So this is, at once, it's a play for the betterment of humanity. It's a commercial play so that we can become richer and hopefully spread the benefits of that increased prosperity more evenly. But it's also a geopolitical play if we play our cards right.
And in thinking about that geopolitical aspect, how do you think AI plays in terms of our national defense and other areas around security, both today and looking forward?
I think much is said naturally, understandably, about this topic. There's a lot of consternation, candidly, about our ability to increasingly automate important decisions that have life or death implications, trigger pulling decisions, whether you're talking about nuclear weapons or anything short of that. And those are really important conversations. I think at this point, our society certainly is not ready to automate many of these decisions. And so it's very important that we have transparency into the algorithms that will help us in an aided fashion make these types of decisions. Then, per the previous question, we'll try and create an environment. Perhaps it'll be global agreements, perhaps it'll be alliances of countries that'll come together and say, we share your values and we want to create some international norms against automating life or death decisions. But I would just emphasize there's a whole other side of artificial intelligence that can make us a lot more safe, a lot more secure. Can enhance our homeland security by monitoring anomalies in the environment that should concern us. It will allow our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines to make decentralized decisions and be aware of threats on the horizon. This will all work to the advantage of a country like the United States, which, at least at the moment, has the most advanced AI technologies in the world.
And something I think is important is also the role of AI in current conflict zones. Obviously, there's been reporting that Ukraine has used facial recognition during its current war. There's also been reporting that Israel has used AI to generate targets in the Gaza Strip. What do you think is the role of AI in conflict? And do you think the ways it's being deployed now is kind of changing the rules about how we might think of using AI in the future?
There's a lot to unpack in that.
Certainly.
Excellent question. I think we're seeing it play out right now. I mean, Ukraine and perhaps Israel, but Ukraine certainly is a test case for the use of this new technology. And one of the interesting things we're finding out is AI provides new opportunities to use old weapons in sort of interesting ways. So we've had drones around now for certainly a generation, and we're seeing the swarming of drones increasingly. That's something that has been talked about for a while, but we're actually seeing it in Ukraine. We have seen the ability of a Patriot battery aided with artificial intelligence technology take down a hypersonic weapon that the Russians were sending the Ukrainians' way. So we're applying older technologies, older platforms in new ways. I think that's really interesting. In terms of the rules, the rules are being established in part by the precedents that are established on the ground. And I think we will come up with judgment calls informed by our values in international and transnational forums about what we find offensive with respect to the use of AI in Ukraine and other places, and then we'll make efforts to disincentivize it or prohibit it. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And there are conversations around that happening. I think everybody's really wondering about how that may be used in this regard. Yeah. And so something I wanted to bring up too is, you introduced legislation that would establish an Office of Competition Analysis, really looking at the various, pros and cons and how we're stacking up against other arenas. Could you talk to me a little bit more about what that office would look like in practice?
Yeah, this is something that Senator Bennett and I thought important to put forward. It's essentially an office of net assessment, determining where the United States at any given moment in time stands vis-a-vis other countries, other adversaries as it relates to national security relevant technology. We would locate this, unlike the Office of Net Assessment, which is within DOD and kind of looks at the entire military posture of the United States against particular actors. This would be within the White House so that it can communicate with DOD, state, commerce, and other relevant committees, departments, and have kind of a whole of government look. But it would also be highly informative to and help direct policy making within the executive branch, but also in the legislative branch. What do we need to do different? Where are our adversaries stronger than us? What investments should we be making? What barriers should we be lowering? Who should we be collaborating with? On and on.
No, I think that definitely amounts to areas from education to cybersecurity to just defense writ large, and how can we mitigate some of those threats. Well, at this moment, I don't think we have time for questions, unfortunately, but really appreciate you coming, and yeah, thanks again.
Ben, thanks so much. Yeah.